Guys, it's a weekend filled with exciting and memorable races around the world. It's the Monaco Grand Prix weekend as well as the Indy 500 weekend as well here in America. It's going to be a fun weekend for racing, and I, for one, can't wait to get this weekend started. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're here to make our predictions for the 2025 Monaco Grand Prix. It's one of my favorite weekends on the calendar just because of the massive amounts of racing going on everywhere in the world, like I mentioned in the intro. This one's going to be a lot of fun, but this one we're specifically going to talk about Monaco because this is our F1 series, our F1 prediction series, where we're going to talk about our biggest positive surprise, our biggest disappointments, our qualifying top three, potentially the most important qualifying session on the calendar, our race podium, one crazy prediction for it, and as well at the end, I'm going to throw in my official prediction for the winner of the Indy 500. Let's go ahead. Let's jump on into it. But before we get started, if you haven't already, subscribe down below. We love talking about Formula One on this channel as well as sim racing at the same time. So we have a little bit of both sides of racing. If it interests you, go ahead, hit subscribe, join our little community. We would love to have you, as well as leave your predictions, what you think is going to happen this weekend in the Principality down in the comment section below. But without further ado, let's go ahead, kick this thing off with our biggest positive surprise. And we're not going to beat around the bush too much because it's Monaco. I think the predictions can only go so far, and there's really only one prediction on this list that matters more than any others. My pick for biggest positive surprise is Fernando Alonso. We saw at the end of the Imola Grand Prix last weekend, Fernando absolutely frustrated to the point of slamming both hands into his head, trying to beat the frustration of not being able to convert a fantastic qualifying into a solid result. I think we're going to see a step forward here from Fernando once again, and if Aston Martin truly have unlocked a bit of, qualifying pace, what better place than for it to come than the most important qualifying session on the calendar? I think we see a weekend with Fernando qualifying in the top 10 and getting his first points in the 2025 season. What do you think? Do you think it's possible? Let me know down in the comment section below. As we move on now to biggest disappointment, this one feels a bit like cheating, because it feels like it's almost a given more times than not. But my biggest disappointment this weekend is Charles Leclerc. Now, is this one a bit of a reverse jinx? Because I, for one, would love to see Charles back up his win last season with another solid result in Monaco in his home race. Absolutely. But at the same time, considering all of the luck and fortune that he got last year to finally get a win at his home race in Monaco, especially given the issues that Ferrari have had so far to start the season, it's really hard for me to see them being able to take that step forward. Now, they did show a lot of good race pace at Imola, but their qualifying pace was nowhere near on pace for what they need to be at. And obviously, them both being knocked out in Q2 in Imola does not bode well for qualifying here in Monaco. So it'll be interesting to say the least. I'm kind of really hoping Charles does well, but at the same time, it's hard for me to ignore the obvious. Let's go ahead and move on now to our qualifying predictions. The most important qualifying, I'll say it again, the most important qualifying session on the calendar, because Monaco and this era of cars, it just does not work at all for overtaking. Now we will see, I don't know, we'll save it. We'll save it because I think we're going to get an interesting twist. I will save it for one crazy prediction. But let's go ahead. Let's kick it off with P3. My prediction for P3 in Monaco qualifying is George Russell. We've seen George actually qualify very well around Monaco before, including last year. And we definitely seems like Mercedes has sort of started to take a step forward where George is kind of always hovering around between that, P3 to P6 range. And it seems like one of those weekends where George, really full focused, I think could get a lot out of that car and put it on, the qualifying podium if there is such a thing. And so George, I think, is going to perform very well this weekend. He seems like he's always right around hovering P3, and I could see an instance where qualifying might let another driver down once again, and George could be right there to take it and snatch it away from him at the earliest moment, like we saw last week in Imola. As we move on now to P2 in qualifying here at Monaco, I'm going with Oscar Piastri. Obviously, him coming off of a pole here in Imola, I think it's going to be another good instance, and we saw it very much last year where he qualified P2 behind Charles Leclerc before ultimately finishing the race in P2 last year. So I think we've seen that Oscar has the pace around Monaco to really put it up there towards the sharp end of the grid and put himself in position to try and at least challenge off the line for a race win in Monaco, but I don't think it's going to be enough because my prediction for P1 pole position here in Monaco is Max Verstappen. It really feels like coming out of Imola that Red Bull has sorted at least something on their car, at least when it comes to Max Verstappen. Obviously, we saw his fantastic, utterly generational move around the outside to take the lead and eventually the win in Imola. And we've all seen in the past what Max has been able to do in qualifying at Monaco. There was the one a couple of years ago, I think it was 2023, I believe, where he was like 2.5 tenths down going into the final sector and still managed to put it on pole position. So we've seen what he's able to do, and if it's true that Red Bull was able to take a step forward, it could mean a lot of danger for the rest of the field. But what do you think? There it is, my top three: a George Russell P3, Oscar Piastri P2, and a Max Verstappen pole position. What do you think? Let's move on now to race podium, and we won't beat around the bush too much because I don't think it's going to be too much of a surprise who I have on my race podium. Let's start in P3. Once again, it's George Russell in this one, and it really might come down to who he's starting next to, but I think George will have enough in the tank, especially considering the start that we saw him have last week in Imola. If he can do that again at Monaco, he might even have an opportunity to move up, depending on what happens going into turn 1. So we'll see, but ultimately, I think Monaco is going to be Monaco, and I think George might end exactly where he started. So P3, George Russell. As we move on now to P2, it's a familiar name, Oscar Piastri. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. Turn 1 at Monaco is always a hold your breath and hope and pray kind of moment. I think Oscar is going to want a bit of revenge after what happened at Imola, but once again, it's Monaco, and sometimes things just don't work out like that. So I'm sure he's going to give it his all, but at the same time, I think he'd much rather settle into P2 and score solid points than really risk it all going into turn 1 at Monaco. So we'll see. And the winner of the Monaco Grand Prix here in 2025, Max Verstappen. It's Monaco. I don't know who could really, expect too many changes over the course of the podium. I think we saw last year that we don't have to talk about last year because last year was, outside of the Charles win, a very interesting situation, particularly also in my team, which I think caused the situation. So we'll leave that one alone. But ultimately, can you really blame me predicting my podium to be exactly the same as my top 3 in qualifying? I don't think I can blame myself, but hey, let me know. All right, second to last prediction, actually, our one crazy prediction. Now, I mentioned it earlier in the video, but there is a change going into the 2025 Monaco Grand Prix in that it is a forced 2-stop race. That's right, each team has to stop each car at least 2 times over the course of the Grand Prix. Now, they're not required to use all 3 tire compounds, but they are obviously required to change at least once if they're on the dries. But I think we're going to see some interesting situations when it comes to the mandatory 2-stop that I think could lead some teams further down who don't qualify particularly well to make something happen, try and do their best to manufacture any sort of result at Monaco and qualifying well outside the top 10. And so my one crazy prediction is that I think we'll see multiple teams pit at least 1 car each within the first 3 laps to get rid of one of their mandatory pit stops. Think basically the people who all get knocked out in Q1 are looking at an opportunity to get one of their mandatory pit stops out of the way early, as well as, try and then gain track position later as those further up the grid opt to not do their pit stop, obviously, until much later in the race, and potentially try and take advantage and gain positions that way. So there we have it, my one crazy prediction. Multiple teams will pit at least 1 car within the first 3 laps of the Grand Prix. All right, I wouldn't be a US race fan if I didn't also make my prediction for the Indy 500 winner. I really thought about doing a full predictions video for the Indy 500, but at the same time, it all just happened so fast. Qualifying came and went, and ultimately I'll end up with tacking on a short prediction here at the end of our Monaco predictions video. That said, it is obviously a very exciting Indy 500. You have a rookie team and a rookie driver on pole position in Robert Schwartzman, the former Ferrari reserve driver, so a little bit of a tie-in there. But I think it's going to be a very interesting race. The Indy 500 is always so exciting. You never know what's going to happen. And my prediction for the winner of the Indy 500 is Pato O'Ward. I think just primarily because I think this is what I would love to see the most. Obviously, whoever wins the Indy 500 deserves it infinitely, and so this is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I know it's going to be exciting because it always is. The environment there is electric. and I really need to add it to my bucket list soon to get out there and get to an Indy 500 in person. So I think that would be a lot of fun. Let me know if you'd be interested in seeing, you know, a vlog style video of me going to the Indy 500, because I would love to make it. But there we have it, guys. The Monaco Grand Prix predictions are in, and we are ready for the weekend to begin. What do you think is going to happen? I would love to see what you guys think down in the comment section below. And as always, once again, subscribe if you haven't already. And if you made it this far into the video, leave a like rating on the video. It really helps me out, and it'll help us grow and reach more friends to grow this little community that we've started over here. But guys, that is going to wrap it up for me here in this one. I hope you are ready for the Monaco Grand Prix weekend like I am. It is not always the most exciting race in the world, but qualifying is going to be electric, and the pop-in circumstances of the whole weekend is always fun to watch from afar. But I hope you enjoy the weekend. We'll be back after it's over to talk about everything that happened. And yeah, guys, I'll see you in the next one.